Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We are starting the second session of this webinar on the theme of performing and in its relation with appropriation. Some notes before introducing the team and the presenters and the respondents. The session is being recorded, as you already know. In the session in the morning, it worked out very well. The chat tool, in which a kind of a dialogue can be developed along the presentations. So use it without restraint. Also to say that in the end, in the question and answers period, use the icon of raise hand that you can see in the bottom line of the Zoom platform for me to know who wants to pose a question or make a comment on the presentations. In terms of the theme of this second session, which is the theme of performing, and this is obviously related with the idea of performance. We would say that this session on performing in relation to appropriation, as I said, implies an action in space, an event. As an action, it can involve, and it's quite important for the presenters that we have with us for this section. So as an action, it can involve artistic practices and design strategies. And we have both of them present today, as we are going to see. As an activity that is relational, sometimes in connection with curatorial practices, which is something that is also present in this first afternoon session. It aims at potentially change places, its purpose and appearance on an ephemeral and permanent basis. Well, I would like to make the screen share. I should have done it before. This is the second part, as you see here. You already know this short text that introduces the thematic of performing, and okay. And for our section, our second session, and in the first slot, because I will be presenting the first three, the two presenters and the respondent, and I will present later the second slot of the two presenters and the respective respondent. In this first slot, we will have first Isabella Indolfi, which is related with Working Group 4. And Isabella is an independent curator with a background on sociology and new media. She's particularly interested in the relations between contemporary art and community-based practices. She's presenting the project called Seminaria, the Biennial Festival of Public Art in Maranola in Formia in Italy, that started in 2011 and ongoing. The second presenter on this slot is Kristen Van Haren from Working Group 3. Kristen is a landscape architect from the University of Copenhagen. She's involved in the research project called Reconfiguring Welfare Landscapes, also in the University of Copenhagen. The project that Kristen will be presenting is called The Thickness of the Green, and is related with our interests in the issue of the future green open spaces in social housing estates in Copenhagen. Then, as a respondent for this first slot, we will have Esteban Restrepo from Working Group 3, which is an architect from the Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana de Medellin. His research is on comparative literature and its relation with architecture. And Esteban is affiliated with the Department of Arts and Representation Techniques at École Nationale Supérieure de Paris, La Villette. So I give the floor to Isabella. Isabella, do you want me to share the film as you mentioned?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone from New York.
Okay, let me just share the film. I already.
Can you turn off the?
Yeah, I already turned off the sound, but I have to put it in full screen. Where do I put it full screen?
Okay.
It's down in the.
It's
okay,
down there.
That yes. One.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one. You can see now in full screen. Okay.
Exactly.
Should I put it, Isabella? Running?
Yes, you can. Yes,
yeah?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's go on and presenting this field work. Seminaria is a biennial festival of public art founded in 2011, which takes place in Maranola, which is a small medieval town in the suburb of Formia, which is a medium city between Roma and Napoli. Maranola overlooks the sea from soft hills filled with olive groves and winding roads that lead up to Mount Aurunci. There are 2,000 inhabitants, a school, a pharmacy, and a small market, and that's all. In fact, the area is suffering of depopulation. The few inhabitants by now, they have anyway a strong identity that is deeply rooted in the rural landscape. And even though the national and local institutions are failing in the preservation of rural life heritage, the community of Maranola is very active in the self-management of their cultural program. In fact, there are about 10 associations out of 2,000 villagers, which is a lot, and it's a high percentage. And one of these associations is Seminaria, which in 2011 accepted a proposal by a group of local people to realize a contemporary art project. Seminaria Festival involves the whole town for 3 days, usually when summer is fading. At that point, Maranola turns into a place where art, environment, and the community bridge all gaps. Medieval alleys, towers, public and private spaces, gardens, host an exhibition which is almost 1 kilometer long in a route, with artists coming from all over Italy and abroad to participate. The Seminaria's art residency program in fact invites artists to collaborate and integrate on social, geographical, and architectural variables and its community. The active participation of the people is, in fact, the backbone of the festival. The local people and the volunteers host the artists and open their own homes to the audience. And their total involvement is the key of this independent festival, which we can say the idea is to unlock doors to let contemporary art out in the open air among the people directly in their lives. In this way, Seminaria hopes to provide an alternative role model to the economic, cultural, and social development of the territory. So this is the context. We were asked about tools and methods. Of course, this is, how can I say, this is not a research project. This is a project that takes place and it's developed step by step on site. And so about methods, I would say that we follow spatial and relational practices, which is a theory. In fact, artists in Seminaria realize life-sized installation, immersive, accessible, and habitable, so that they allow viewers to become meaningful activators of the artwork themselves. So the first question is to put the artist in deep dialogue with the community. So they are asked to design and realize site-specific projects. So just to recap, spatial and relational practices and site-specific projects. Someone asking something? No. Okay. So we realize multimedia, interactive installations, sculptures, video, relational and performative works, which are the final outcome of this artistic research. All artworks are, we used to say, on a one-to-one scale, because the relationship between each artwork and the reality is direct. So this immediacy between relational and spatial highlights the need for a communication based on an equal status. And this is the key, maybe, to make the people to reappropriate in a dialogue way to the space. So artists take inspiration by the local narratives to create new ones. And they keep and save also the old ones, the old traditions. And in this sense, we can say that artists are the tools. So I mentioned before the methods. Now, which are the tools? Maybe the artists themselves, because they help to activate the community. And in fact, also the residency program is considered a tool, because it's a real journey in the community life and enables the artist to work in a site-specific way. So the community is very small, as I told before, and the sense of belonging is very strong. So the idea of the artists as a tools, it's that every external intervention is very helpful to open windows on the outside of this sensory community. Artists, in fact, are called to research and highlight the set of small things that make up this sensory community. I would remember you that sensory community is taken from the little manual that was released by the COST from another work group. So, and I will tell you what does it make a sensory community. It's when a community gather around little small things around, in this case for Maranola, it's the difficulty of living in a village which has been designed for medieval needs, or more the fatigue of steep stairs of the town, the fatigue, sorry. And also the smell of the production process of the olive oil that spread from the hill, or even more, the sounds of the bells of the 3 churches that are always open for the inhabitants. So all these little things, they shape the sensory community. But these stimuli sometimes the community is not aware of these stimuli. So sometimes we need someone to activate that. They are unconscious. So the artists, which we consider like epidermal antennas, they perceive all these little marks, re-elaborate them, and return them to the community in form of artwork. So finally, this outsider gaze of the artists helps the community to recognize their own identity, to reenact it, and eventually to open itself to the outside. So this is what we mean basically for appropriation of their own identity. You're looking now at an artwork which was basically a mirror, an interactive mirror, and you can see the people, how they interact with it by looking at themselves. And so I think I'm running out of time, so I just wanted to say that in this way, we hope to give a political relevance to our work. Political means, in this case, social regeneration. And even if our event is ephemeral and it takes place only every 2 years and only for 3 nights, we are convinced, and the community can confirm that it creates a long-lasting, a permanent memory, which is the best way to speak and to talk with the community and to act with them. And so the video is a little bit longer, so we can just maybe leave it going. Or this is a group of architects, maybe you are interested in Stalker from Italy, and they create this big bed in a square, in a little square of the village, and it was an amazing place, a way to reappropriate of this empty place for the people, and to sleep there and to hang out there. And this is Davide Dormino, which is an interactive sculpture that required the participation of the people to bring these small balls up to the stairs and release them down in this sculpture made of old, how can I say, I don't remember the name, they are old things to collect water from the roofs. And so it was a circular sculpture, and in every little small ball you couldn't could write a message and leave it in the flow. So yeah, here it is. And that's the last artwork that I selected for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabella, for your wonderful, the images are really mesmerizing. They are very interesting, the film that you presented along your talk. Well, we just go to Kristen to present the thickness of the green. Kristen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. You will screen share?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
okay.
will do that. 1 second. So, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
All black
No.
in the moment.
Okay, let me try stopping. Oh, okay, maybe I should have waited. Let me try again. Share screen. Share.
Yeah.
Yes, we can see
Yeah.
it.
And is it a full screen now?
Give it a second.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe we have to wait a little bit for it to.
Sometimes it doesn't work with the full screen, depending on the browser. This could be a problem.
Kristen, do you want me to screen share? I will have to go to.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it full screen?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's fine, don't worry.
Okay, okay, so long as you can see it.
Okay.
Okay, then I'll start. But first, I just want to thank you, of course, for the opportunity to present at the Fieldwork webinar today. I have recently just finished my PhD, as was introduced before, from the University of Copenhagen, where I was part of the Reconfiguring Welfare Landscapes research group. Which investigated the landscapes of Danish social housing between 1950 and 1980. And within this specific project, I focused on 2 case studies, Bellahøj and Farm Midpoint. What I did was I investigated these 2 sites through a process that I refer to as a process of creating thick descriptions. By combining photographic modes of inquiry with archival findings within this case study analysis, my research works to broaden understandings of the lesser acknowledged and often oversimplified green spaces of the Danish social housing estates. The aim was to create new readings of the landscapes, so to better articulate the diverse spatial, material, historical, temporal qualities of the green spaces, which we refer to as welfare landscapes. The thick descriptions establish a richer understanding of the unique and local spatial qualities and often understudied ideas and opportunities embedded in the landscapes that contributed to the welfare landscapes imaginary and production, and also hold value for the future visions of these estates. So just to briefly introduce you to the 2 case studies. Bellahøj is a social housing estate built between 1951 and 56 and was designed by 2 young architects who won a 1944 architectural competition. And the project was a direct response to the housing shortage that Denmark faced and many other countries after the war. Bellahøj is located just 5 kilometers north of the inner city of Copenhagen and was a well-known and sizable farm until it was purchased by the city as part of its expansion plan. Bellahøj is the first tower block social housing construction in Denmark and was established as such to bring sunlight, fresh air, green living environments to the residents. Furthermore, Belohai represents how the pre-war housing developments, typically characterized by low-lying blocks in an open grass expanse, became a site of experimentation for modern construction techniques and methods and materials, and kind of in an attempt to show the potentials of the future societal living and welfare ideals. Farm Midpoint is constructed approximately 30 years after Belohai, between 1971 and 74, and is located about 20 kilometers northwest of Copenhagen, and is situated on one of the transport routes that run along the ring finger of the 1947 finger plan, if you're familiar with that. It was always envisioned that the residents of Farm Midpoint could easily be able to commute to Copenhagen for work and then return at the end of the day to better homes and fresher air. The car thus became central to Farm Midpoint's concept and construction, and what resulted was, as you can see, an architectural kind of superstructure of 24 detached blocks above parking lots, so that the cars remained on a separate plane from pedestrians, and so that the blocks could be simultaneously connected on a shared green horizontal plane. The high density low-rise construction that resulted reflects a fracturing of the open park-like landscape that we see at Belohai, and it became instead a green, more diverse and distributed into different spatial opportunities for the formation of communities in different ways. So together, the two welfare landscapes represent a period when green became incorporated into the vision of the welfare society as part of an idealized future of well-being. Simultaneously, Belohai's and Farm Midpoint's overall spatial structures clearly reveal significant shifts in terms of how the good life was envisioned within the housing environment. So both were versions of green cities, and both attempted to construct innovative living environments that would provide the best opportunities for the residents' well-being, but they each interpreted and pursued these objectives in distinct and differing ways. They thus articulate how green was perceived and incorporated and materialized within the housing projects between 1950 and 1980, offering a unique opportunity to understand the changing living ideals of the Danish post-war welfare society. Belohai and Farm Midpoint, along with many of the other social housing estates constructed in Denmark at this time, still to this day provide unique living environments that feel urban while maintaining a close proximity to nature. However, today, many of these housing constructions are not seen in such a pleasant light. They're perceived as socially challenged, conflict-ridden, and in need of desperate renewal. And regenerative efforts have begun on some of these housing projects, yet the focus has largely been confined to architectural design and infrastructure construction, focusing on densification or climate adaptations within kind of taking over the open spaces with little acknowledgement of the landscape's embedded and existing spatial qualities. And this is why I kind of engaged in this project, to bring some attention to the opportunities and the potentials and the histories of these green open spaces. So the aim of the research was to increase the knowledge surrounding the inherent spatial and ideological characteristics of the welfare landscapes and the centrality that they had in envisioning and materializing the good life, so that there would be less tendency to push these landscapes into the background of future visions for the Danish social housing projects. They make up a large portion of the housing stock today, and so their repurposing will have a great impact on future living environments. In addition to gathering knowledge surrounding the welfare landscapes, it was equally important for me to find another way of telling the welfare landscapes that would allow them, that would bring an awareness to the unique spatial environments of the two case studies. So for this, I adopted and adapted the method of thick description, which is an ethnographic method developed by Clifford Geertz, which enables understandings to move beyond mere facts and surface appearances by inserting details and contexts into explanations and thus descriptions. So essentially, the thickness comes from a focus on the minute or the minor, looking to the local and engaging in the site specific. And Gertz describes this practice as one that reduces the opacity of preconceptions, yet without reducing their particularity. Thick descriptions are composed narratives of the collected, bringing together and making accessible the many layers, intricate qualities, perspectives, scales, and truths that manifest themselves in the sites of analysis. Thick descriptions attempt to describe what's really going on through what Gertz explains as a process of gathering and rendering anew. It's a creative act and an active engagement in making. So thick descriptions are essentially like fictions in that they become representations of fragments gathered together into new narratives. My gathering consisted of returning to the archives, tracing the intentions of those involved in the conceptualization and the shaping of the welfare landscapes. I also returned to the sites today, using photography to engage with the spatiality and materiality of the landscapes, capturing their spaces, lights, colors, textures, temporality, these essential landscape qualities that often evade words. The resultant thick photographic descriptions are thus a combination of historical and spatial analysis done through a combined visual textual inquiry, a linking of the immaterial and material, past and present, histories and on-the-ground discoveries gathered together and rendered anew. In the photo essays themselves, I have placed historical insights found in the archives below selected photographs, allowing the narratives through the sites to be guided by quotes of those involved in the conception and construction of Bellahoi and Farm Midpoint. The varied voices of architects, residents, municipal planners, and the like together form a polemic dialogue of the diverse cultural and practice-based intentions of well-being materialized in the green that have largely until now lived on silently. These insights sit below contemporary photographs, which bring into frame and into focus the lived experience of the landscapes, depicting the complexity of the existing and dynamic sensorial worlds that offer an opportunity to ground these lesser material, archival sourced aims and imaginings of the past in the living landscapes of today. And I also think it's just important to mention that while I've had the opportunity to exhibit these photo essays on a few occasions, they were generally designed and formatted to function like pages in a book, or specifically my dissertation. The photo essays for me were a way to challenge the typical dissertation format, equally using visuals and words to tell the story of these welfare landscapes. So now I would just like to walk you through a very small excerpt of one of my photo essays, which is going to be on Farm Midpoint. And here you can see the quotes that I've gathered from the archives paired with my photographs. New forms of housing adapted to changing modes of living and technical developments. The dark brown blocks situated with their grass-covered roofs and flowering hanging gardens. The hanging gardens which during antiquity were counted among the 7 wonders of the world. Like lushly overgrown outcroppings in a forest of tall pine trees and birches. We do not propose that the forest plantings between the terraced houses be allocated to any particular purpose. The use of these areas lays, in part, in the future. The trees need to grow, and that is essential. What is planted is not just a stage decoration. Which is being planted now is allowed to grow and develop. If it is to be possible to achieve lushness, that lushness which can be conjured up with water and fertilizer. Many have wondered about and worked with the ways that one can make our ways of living better, more in line with the contemporary demands for community and potentials for developing. With Farm Midpoint, a new idea of living is realized, the open-close settlement. Light and airiness achieved by creating green areas between the housing blocks. The connection of the apartments with a very large outdoor space that is appropriate for furnishing and sitting sheltered from the elements. It is such a strange, idealistic setting. That with an undergrowth of flowering bushes spanned out between the columns of the underground parking so that the columns themselves are perceived as tree trunks. And in this way, Farm Midpoint becomes free of parking deserts. Where there are no houses, there is green. So the thick descriptions for me provide a situated telling and intimate defense of the complexity of the green. Their visual and textual descriptions widen one's gaze and provide a horizon of new relationships by which to comprehend the idiosyncrasies and specificities of these everyday welfare living environments. The thick descriptions render a narrative of Danish social housing estates from an alternative perspective, from a landscape perspective, providing the opportunity for new readings and more informed experiences of space, more situated understandings, attuned to the details and diversity of the welfare landscapes or the thickness of the green. Yeah, and that's it.
Thank you, Kristen, for your marvelous presentation with those very sensitive images of the nature growing, which is quite fantastic. Now, I would, without further delay, ask Esteban to be the respondent of these two projects. Esteban, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to see all these faces, small faces on my screen. So I'm going to read a little text I wrote about these two very interesting projects. First, I would like to say that what Isabella and Kristen projects interest me the most was the way in which writing is treated as an expanded practice, allowing to update the imaginaries about a territory, city, or an architectural project where a considerable number of actors are involved and different periods and techniques are confronted. It is the term of actualization as a commitment with time in its several forms and senses that I would like to focus on my little intervention. I'll start with the festival Seminaria. I had the pleasure to attend Almada's Writing Place meeting on November 2019 when Isabella and Mariana presented their project, Seminaria. So their work is not new for me. However, I'm glad that thanks to this webinar, I could rediscover their project and deepen into its aims. First of all, I want to say that I am very sympathetic to the rural heritage. That is why Seminaria and Sonidor, parallel project, first captured my attention. But the thing that interests me the most is to understand how the festival Seminaria could be understood as a form of writing a place, which is finally the core of this huge project in which we are all involved. For that, I will to evoke again 3 moments of the process of this performative action and present in Isabella and Mariana's statement, or at least in the draft they sent me some weeks ago, which was almost the same Isabella just presented. So the first moment is, I quote Isabella, Seminaria accepted a proposal from a group of local people to realize a contemporary art project. End of quote. Here we can see an important autocritical position from the inhabitants of the place who voluntarily wish to put themselves, their practices, their techniques, their stories, that is, their own language, in a state of observation. That states a need, but also shows the openness of the inhabitants to confront their immemorial languages to contemporary ones. I think that's a very, very interesting point, like the construction of a common language in Isabella's project. The second point of the statement was this one, and I quote, Seminaria's art residency program invites artists to collaborate and integrate on social, geographic, and architectural variables of the town and its community. The active participation of the people is the backbone of the festival. The local people and the volunteers host the artists and open their own homes to the audience. End of quote. This shows a very essential aspect of Seminaria's statement about art, a vision in which there is no distinction between artists and inhabitants because both of them indeed work together. The imaginary boundaries disappear and the product can be to recognize both of them, which could be seen like a mutual reappropriation. I think there's an appropriation from the inhabitants, but also a reappropriation from the artists. So there's like a mutual reappropriation in this project. And the third part of the statement is this one: artists take inspiration from local narratives to create new ones and keep and save the old ones. End of quote. In fact, the inhabitants provide stories, gestures, rites, and the artists provide new expressive tools. The conjunction of the two of them is the simultaneous, immemorial, and updated language of the place. It is not an imposition of a language that could lead to silence, to hermeticism, but on the contrary, to respect and sharing, or as Isabella and Mariana state, to create bridges that fill gaps between imaginaries, gestures, materials, techniques, senses, etc. So the resultant common language is at the same time immemorial and contemporary, in which, as I just said, a broad spectrum of people could recognize themselves. I would like to think that the integration between all the actors of this festival, Seminaria, that is inhabitants, curators, artists, and spectators, is in itself a ritual in which the spirits of the place are respectfully waken up to set a dialogue with them. Thus, Seminaria puts a place, Maranola, the small village in the suburbs of Fromia, in a delirious state in order to allow the emergence of its deepest consciousness and unconsciousness. And inhabitants, artists, curators, visitors are a sort of shamans or mediators between these spirits and the place itself. During the festival, the place in fact raves and a delirium is set up. I think that's amazing and very, very beautiful. Before talking about Kirsten project, I would like to say that I am, as member of the working group 3, where we treat about methods, I think that even if Isabella says that this is not a research project, I think there is like an inner method that could be grasped in order to integrate these processes of mutual reappropriation, and could be part of an eventual exercise of integration between working group 4 and working group 3. Now I pass to the project of Kirsten. Kirsten project, based on the thick description method by Clifford Geertz, articulates different representation techniques or mediums in order to produce a bipartite narration of a space where photos and text are experienced simultaneously, like a two-line music score in which one influences the other and vice versa, creating a third party, that is a harmony. And here harmony could be seen as a new meaning that emerges by joining images and words. Kirsten's proposal makes me think in some ways to Bernard Tschumy's The Manhattan Transcripts experimental project, where he represents 4 different iconic spaces from New York using a tripartite device, including pictures, architectural plans, and movement diagrams in a story timeline in order to grasp a complex sense of the reality of these 4 spaces, beyond of which a monotechnic device could provide. Thus, this hybrid device whose some of its artistic ancestors or relatives could be the collage itself, or the photo novel, or the psychogeographic derive, among others, generates a hypersense or a hyper image of a given place. In this case, the two social housings in the suburbs of Copenhagen, but that could clearly be applied somewhere else. I was also interested in the treatment of a diachronical sense of time in Christian project, allowing to grasp the evolution of ideals, imaginaries, and perceptions about green, nature, and mainly the relationship between suburban city housing and landscape through concrete building cases. Indeed, the method puts together two times, past and present, which makes of it a historical, sociological, and critical device. By returning to the archives in order to trace the landscape original intentions of the architects and confronting them to a nowadays photographic register, the method pretends to understand the current validity or the caducity of these original intentions, but also the mutations of these intentions themselves. And by mutation, I mean the unexpected, which exceeds the control of conception and belongs rather to another level of reality, the one of experience, time, in short, life itself. I also appreciate in Christian proposal its openness, its non-restrictiveness. It is in fact an inclusive method where not only the architectural speech and nowadays photographic register are included, it is also open to all sorts of histories from different actors, the ones from the inhabitants or visitors of the buildings, for instance. Finally, and this is more a question than a comment for Kristen. I was interested in the literary nature of this method because of my research background in comparative literature, and more specifically in understanding the creative criteria of the narrative strategy under which these different texts and images are arranged. That is the criteria of choosing, putting together, assembling, cutting, editing, emphasizing the different discourses coming from different actors and sources, architects, builders, inhabitants, visitors, researchers, and others, but also involving different times, pasts, on plural, presents, and futures. So I finish my comment with this question that maybe Kristen could answer us in the question and answers moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Can I
Esteban.
tell thank you?
Yeah.
Can I say thank you to Esteban for his critical reading? It was really made it everything clear. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
You.
Fantastic critical approach of the projects, really. But we are a little bit ahead of time. So I think that are a lot of questions that will be posed in the question and answer period. But maybe we will not now open the debate, but we will open it in the end with all the 4 projects and the responses from the respondents. Okay, now I will briefly present the second slot of this second session on performing. We will have first Pablo Costa from Working Group 4, which is an architect and urbanist from the PUC Campinas in Brazil. Is interested in research processes of urban obsolescence and interim reuse of vacant spaces. He's a researcher of Urban Lab on the Faculty of Architecture in University of Lisbon, and he will be presenting his a project that was done in the context of the Writing Urban Places cost action, which is called, as I said, Interim Reuse in a Portuguese Post-Industrial Shrinking City. Then we will have the second group of presenters, which is Italo de Vroom, Sophie Van Riel, and Willy Vogel, which comes from the three working groups, Willy from working group 2, Sophie from working group 3, and Italo from working group 4. They have a studio, as I see in the bios in the list on the Writing Urban Places site. They have a studio called Macadam, which is a collective of architects from the Technical University of Delft, all of them, I guess, which has a transversal practice that emerged from their graduation projects in TU Delft. They will be presenting the project Someone, Somewhere, the European Union, a home for so many difference. Then as a respondent, we will have Giuseppe Resta from Working Group 2, which is an architect and curator, a researcher on architecture and the city in relation to the connection between space and power. Is an assistant professor at Bilkent University in Ankara, Turkey. So without further delay, I will ask Pablo to, the floor is yours, Pablo.
Okay, Luis, can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Great, great. Let me...
You're sharing your screen, right? Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay. It's okay. It's all good. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. First, thanks a lot for the invitation for this webinar. I would like to say this is a great pleasure to me to be part of this team. Thanks a lot to Luis and thanks a lot to Slobodan. This brief presentation named Interim Reuse in a Portuguese post-industrial shrinking city, a methodological approach, is about a tool that I've developed during my PhD thesis, and I applied it for a few months last year in a shrinking city close to Lisbon. And for this, in addition to a whole scientific investigation for some years, I also took advantage of some results and some insights from the short-term mission that I carried out in Amsterdam in March 2020, with support from the Writing Urban Place. Special thanks to Professor Klasky, having me here, offering me the support. And well, in short, my thesis is about, as Luis said, my PhD thesis is about the urban obsolescence and interim reuses in vacant spaces. That is uses between uses, okay? Temporary use between the use that has ceased and the future use. As a principle, I understand that obsolescence is part of the urban contemporary landscape, and the abandoned is a stage in the development of cities and not an end point or an end of cycle or something like this. Therefore, we can use this special condition and this special temporality for temporary activities and also include them in the urban planning itself. Okay. This experience that I'm going to show you is part of this vision. How can we take advantage of idle time and proposed interim solutions that can activate space? Furthermore, this is an experiment with the objective also of creating a participatory tool where the people can give their opinions and express themselves. I wanted to reach some memories, some subjective aspects that are hard to reach with the conventional, with the orthodox tools from the urban planning itself. For this, I created a methodology called scenario elicitation, where I encourage community participation in the planning and also stimulated the discussion about abandon, about heritage, about interim uses, about memories of the place, and a lot of things. Scenario elicitation is a tool that combines photo elicitation and scenario planning. Photo elicitation created by the photographer John Collier in 1957, I think, is about using images in an interview to serve as a trigger of memory and to bring out subject aspects more easily. On the other hand, the scenario planning developed by Herman Kahn is a method for testing theories and anticipating possible futures. As an architects, we use a lot of this. Okay, we project. Okay, we design. In short, from the photo elicitation, I use the ability to elicit the interviewee's memories and subjectives in relation to the abandoned space and its reconversion. And from the scenario planning, I take advantage of the ability to concise, to evaluate and test future scenarios. So what did I do? I created an online survey based on images and photo montage. They were current images of 3 study areas in the city of Barreiro and photo montages of possible interim uses from these 3 areas. Barreiro is a shrinking city in the Lisbon metropolitan area. I put a map here, okay, to you to know. It's a small city, and a city with many problems, but with a rich and huge industrial heritage. The biggest industry in the history of Portugal was there, called CUF. CUF was the 4th largest industrial complex in Europe in the 60s, in the 70s. And after the revolution here in Portugal, the company was nationalized and went into decline, leaving a trail of abandoned in the landscape today. So I include here a map prepared by the No Void project, a research project that I was part of, and that study ruins and vacant lands in Portuguese cities. And we can show in this map, for example, that 1/3 of the territory of Barreiro is in ruins. Okay, 30% of the territory is or ruin or vacant land or something like this. From this territory, this ruin territory, I choose 3 areas to carry out the experiment. The first, a small scale, an ordinary industrial warehouse without an important historical record and already built in a period of CUF decay. The second, a medium scale, a railway structure that is classified as heritage. And the third, a large vacant lot, which was once the site of large industrial structures, but we were all demolished. There were 3 different spaces with different dynamics and different importance for the city. So then the survey begins with the basic personal questions and moves into current image of one of the study areas. Next, I asked, do you know where this land is located? Okay, this question opens a kind of a conversation. People need to think about, try to recognize some points of this photo, and automatically start to search for the memories related to space or about the use that happen or that happens nowadays. And after I put some another questions. I put a question about their feelings. Okay, what do you feel when you see these images or when you eventually visit the site? And I put some options like sadness, melancholy, fear, revolt, expectation, good feelings and bad feelings. Okay, to mix this one. And finally, would you like to comment your answer? Listen, the images were not obvious, but most of them recognized the space, and because of this, I think because of this way of association feelings with the space, many of the people felt stimulated to talk a little about their personal relationship with the space and reflect in general. My goal here was also to understand how feelings and emotions and personal stories or these kind of subjectives could interfere in the evaluation of the interim scenarios that we will present next. In the other parts of survey, I present 6 possible interim scenarios for the area, for this abandoned area. I'm sorry, here is all in Portuguese because it's a survey in Portuguese, but I try to translate a little bit. In this part of the survey, I gave the opportunity to evaluate each scenario, each of the 6 scenarios, and also to comment on the answer or suggest something. And a lot of people did it. It was one of my goals to stimulate the people to talk about their past, but their future too. Here are the 6 scenarios for the 3 areas. And they are not exactly the same scenarios for each areas, but there is the same idea behind it. Okay, for example, an outdoor space for sports is different than indoor space of sport, but the idea is the same. Okay, and then the people could evaluate in the scale 1 to 5. I don't know if I can say this, but the winner scenario, for example, was different for each area, and it reinforces an idea that solutions in urban planning should be site-specific instead of a irrational search for a universal or a unique solution. In addition, it seems to me that in places that have greater or larger historical importance, people prefer more collective and recreational use, while for the ordinary warehouse, for example, the problem of lack of jobs in the city is reflected. So I put the loser scenario too, okay, for each area, but it's always it always the same. It was the community urban community gardens, and this can be explained with the testimonial that people gave in the survey. I put some comments here, or some quotes. And for example, one interesting about this kind of community urban gardens, why they don't like. For example, a person said to here, the soils have been contaminated for years. I remember acid rains damaged car paint when I was a kid. Or there's another one. I know that there is a contaminated land in the old factory area. Does it the population or the people recognizing these spaces the possibility of the soil being contaminated, and that would already be decisive for the failure of this option for gardens? I also include here here this evolution, these tables of evaluation, the results. Okay, you can show this the total score and for each area. In the vacant lot, the non-designed park, it's here. Okay, and the flea market was a worse scenario, but the community gardens was a bad shoe. In the rail structure and the warehouse, the community gardens was the worst. And then I put some quickly here to, because I think my time is it's ending. I also include this table of feeling on the slide. It is also very interesting to analyze this aspect that was only possible to capture through this elicitation methodology. Here I separate the feelings between good feelings and bad feelings. And in the middle, I put the melancholy and nostalgia, because it's a feeling that is not good and not bad. And you can see that the bad feelings prevail a bit about the good feelings. In the industrial warehouse, this is very evident. but the feeling that was most often mentioned was sadness. Is the only one that is above 20% of the answer in all areas. And I think that's it. That is my experience. This is my methodology that I created. And then if anyone wants to know a little bit more, you can email me. Okay. And thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, Pablo, for the very interesting presentation. We will go further on now to Italo, Sophie, and Willy. I don't know if the three of you are going to talk. Feel free of deciding how you are presenting your project. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Hello, everyone. We will share the screen in a bit. But first of all, next to me is sitting Italo. I'm Sophie, and Willy is also part of our team, but she's in Berlin, so she's not exactly around the corner. Well, let's go to the slides. Let's go to the slides. Here. Okay, can everyone see it? Let me check. Yeah, okay, perfect. Well, last July we graduated with the three of us, and Klaske was actually our main tutor. So it's actually very nice to see her again. And we graduated on a project named Someone, Somewhere, European Union, a Home for So Many Differences. We are trained as architects, and we had the feeling that we wanted to do a project during our graduation, which, well, had the scope of the European Union. And we wondered if it is possible that through architecture, you can link different countries and different towns and cities. During our research, we asked ourselves, how can we generate a place which is related to different skills and related to multiple actors and their stories, in which one can feel at home? We analyzed 18 towns and cities. We actually went on a field research for 5 weeks. We drove in a little van, our movable studio, and we visited all these towns and cities to grasp a quick understanding and also try to see if it's possible to summarize these towns and cities in a way. We did that through tools borrowed from literature. Along on our field research, we brought a roadmap. That's the image you see here on this slide. So what we indicate here are, for example, the locations, but also historical notes. And in every town and city, we sampled materials, we interviewed people on the streets. We had even the opportunity in some cities to present at a couple of universities. And on the basis of this information, we made a quick summary based on people, actions, and settings. But we're not here today to go through our entire graduation project. We actually like to highlight our design strategy, because for every town and city, we designed a pavilion. Islo will talk about this later on, and he will explain our design strategy on the basis of meaningfulness, appropriation, and integration, which are the most important terms of today. We will do this on the basis of one case study to make it clearer for you as well. Today we will explain the case study of Russe. Russe is a mid-sized city in Bulgaria on the border with Romania. The border is well, indicated by the river the Danube, and Russe itself, Russe itself is facing Giurgiu, the town in Romania. When we drove up to Russe, we were surrounded by these endless fields of farmland, and we had this pretty bumpy road, so we were pretty curious, okay, where are we heading to? Well, first of all, we were greeted by the industry in the outskirts. The industry is very present in this town. It's also one of the main drivers of economy and economic growth over the years. Russe is one of the main harbor cities of Bulgaria as well. We had one in-depth interview with Nina Dragneva, an urban planner of the city of Russe, and she gave us information about historical events, but also she provided us information about the relation with Giurgiu, the town at the other side of the border. But besides having this in-depth interview, we also went onto the streets and just asking people how they feel about their town and city, trying to grasp an understanding of this place, which was new to us. Many people in the streets indicated their city center as Little Vienna, and they were very proud of it. Little Vienna, as you can also see in these images, is this colorful, picturesque little city center. Nevertheless, it is surrounded by concrete blocks, and people told us that they found this environment more harsh, more difficult to link to. So by taking photographic samples, by speaking to people, but also by shooting film and sampling materials, we made a summary of all the 18 towns and cities we visited. We did this on the basis of making a character out of Russe. So for us, Russe became the older sister of the frivolous Vienna, and to keep up, she decorated her sober suit with some Baroque jewelry. And with this in mind, with this summary and all the information we gathered, we came back to Delft to come up with a new design strategy.
So returning in Delft from our research, we had this van full of information, and our aim was to come up with a project that addresses all the local places, but also connects them on a larger scale, such as the European Union. And therefore, our design proposal was a pavilion for 3 reasons. Since the pavilion is, due to its size, already local and a bit more inviting. Pavilion is in essence an open structure and therefore an extension of the public space. And it has no distinct program. So it's suitable for different groups of people and different activities to address this place as their own. Using the research as input, we needed tools which we could work as architects to give meaning to these designs. And therefore we used, for example, color to refer to the landscape, the door handle as the first physical touch with the building. We did light studies to address the atmosphere we experienced in these places, and the shape which responds to the character we wrote for the city. These are the examples for the city of Goes, which Sophie explained. And here you see how the light atmosphere is addressed in the design of the pavilions. On the right, you see the pavilion. So going to the program of the pavilion, so how it can be appropriated, we took a more general approach. So where the design really focused on the local scale, all the pavilions have the same program. So here you see, again, Pavilion of Goes with the colors and the materials and the light. But in the center, there's the table, and the table is an important part. It's designed by us in such a way that it can be arranged in different arrangements for different occasions. So it has this central core with different plates around and can be used for larger or smaller groups of people. This is something which we continued in our studio and are still trying to further elaborate on. The table as an extension of the public space, as a piece of furniture we all know and where we can gather as a society. So concluding our research, it was important to integrate this project on the large scale, on the European scale. Therefore, we used the repetition, so the sequence of this route with all the cities following after each other. Every city has a pavilion that's designed in a specific way that it's anchored in the place, in the local place, by different materials and different atmosphere and shape. But inside, in this distinctive pavilions, there's the same program, there's the table, and it has a reoccurring theme. And therefore they are all linked by with each other by design method, but also by program. So again, our field research gave input to come up with meaningfulness in the design. And then in the program, we had the general approach, adding a table, and then the integration, we addressed that by repetition of the design. And then our statement for today is regarding this design strategy. We state that it becomes easier to appropriate places when the space is experienced as meaningful. And thereby we would like to make a note on the difference between space and place, where the space we really see as the three-dimensional space which is designed and which then gives meaning to the place, and the place then the more mental concept where people go to, which people talk about. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Great journey. 5 weeks in a van. Fantastic. Now we will have Giuseppe as a respondent to these two projects. Giuseppe?
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone.
Are you screen sharing, right?
Yes, I'll try.
Okay, cool.
You let me know if.
Okay, okay.
My,
Yeah. But it's not full screen. Oh, now it is. Okay, perfect, perfect,
okay.
perfect.
Okay, well, thank you, Italo, Sophie, Willie, and Pablo for your great presentations. What I'll try to do is to, let's say, single out 4 key concepts of these two projects, at least how, according to me, they might be relevant to the performative dimension of spatial appropriation. So I will then connect each one of these key concepts with one reference and maybe create a different kind of debate about the fundamentals of your projects. So I'll start with Salmon Summer. Well, it's interesting how you try to connect in a way 2 very different scales. And with the pavilion, it must be site specific. So in this case, we've seen Ruse. It should be specific to Ruse, but at the same time, it should be like a node of a European network. So this is a very difficult endeavor. And well, probably you have used a very interesting kind of typological approach, more contemporary typological approach to achieve a unity of this network and then have some kind of specificity of the place. So these are the 4 topics I found in your project. One is that of the persona, of the character, and what I find interesting of the persona, of this idea that you mentioned in the brief, the persona might not correspond to the actual personality of someone. It can be like a mask, a facade, so something that is acted to respond to society. And in this effort, this struggle to between the anonymous and the personality, I'd like to link this with a book, a very famous novel by Orhan Pamuk, My Name is Red. And it's the story is basically about miniature artists who were commissioned by the Sultan a different kind of book in which they were supposed to have a figurative approach. So they needed to represent faces, trees, streams, and in doing so, in a way, the miniature artist that is meant to be anonymous, in that case, it became a sort of signature. And so there is also this struggle between the personality of the single and the anonymous, more, let's say, the avoidance of the personality of a number of people working on this book, as an example. And related to this kind of topic of the figuration, I'll go to the idea of totem. And I think your pavilion, in a way, might represent a totem. It is like the physical figuration of a ritual, of an urban ritual. And in this, I think, since we are in Ruse, I think I have to mention Elias Canetti, and Ruse was his birthplace, and especially in his work Crowds and Power, where he works on the psychology of the crowd, how the crowd responds to different kinds of power. He really he described the making of the totem as like an emblem, a symbol, and it is that kind of thing that transform a gathering into a community. Going on, we have the problem of the double. You yourself mentioned like this more Little Vienna kind of atmosphere against the brutalist Soviet architecture. You mentioned the difference of colors, shapes, urban patterns, etc. So this idea of studying two so different personalities in one element might be related to this idea of the twins, of the double, that was explored a lot during the by the Pre-Raphaelites, and the twin, the reflection became like a topos, and especially when they refer to the medieval age, and we can see that in Dante Gabriel Rossetti, in this painting by Rossetti, in which in the medieval time, meeting a twin, meeting someone that resembles like yourself, it's a very bad omen. So there is always this gloomy atmosphere in these paintings when you meet your double, you meet your twin. And I think as you did, considering all the elements, it's needed to consider all the elements, the good and the bad of your understanding of the city. And finally, I found very interesting how you left the program of this pavilion open, because now, I mean, we are used to design urban spaces with a lot of function, with a dense functional program, while we need also a buffer zone where to rest, where to be inactive, where to slow down. And in this art of lingering, I think I need to mention Byung-Chul Han and his work on this lingering as an art, as a way, as implementing deceleration strategies to escape our kind of hectic day life, our self-exploitation from work. Now I'll go to the interviews, etc., by Pablo Costa. Yes, the project is a very different one. We are close to Lisbon, and here I see, well, first of all, the problem of the ruins, how we see the ruins and how we are still fascinated by the ruins. This is a etching by Piranesi about the aqueduct of Nero in Rome. And there is a sort of kind of danger, I think, in having this kind of romantic approach to ruins, to aestheticizing the ruins as a playground. But what I like of Pablo's project is, I think, at least to my understanding, he treats these ruins with a very active role, like a base to stand on and to be active matter for the evolution of the city. Secondly, the industrial heritage, that is another kind of a new kind of heritage that of the recent past. And we, after the industrialization, we are facing this problem of, as also Pablo mentioned, of the pollution, of recovering these industrial districts. And at the same time, as Marc Auger wrote, I don't think there is an English translation for this book, but basically he said that today our contemporary society is not able anymore to produce ruins. Even the present is already planning for the future. We are all projected to the future, and we really need ruins to keep track of our path. And I think caring about industrial heritage with an adequate kind of approach, it's very important to keep this track of our recent past. And well, then we have the scenario building. That is maybe the most important part of the project of the creation, this combination of actions together with different places. And I also like the way the effort Pablo put in creating alternative futures and then submitting these alternative scenarios to the people. Again, this power of imagination should be recovered, and I link that with the period of the end of the 60s and the 70s when we, when the radicals really imagined a different future with a strong, with the project, the architectural and urban project as a strong political message, a stance to change the status quo of that time. So the very last slide is about co-creation, and it's the main part of the methodology, I believe. And the co-creation, the co-design is something that which you give a lot of inputs to a community, to representatives of the community, and then you try to manage to coordinate responses. And usually it happens also that you have different responses from this participation process, and you even have conflicting responses. So how to deal with these conflicting responses? This will be a question for Pablo. And I will finish with this picture in Naples, where this do-it-yourself special appropriation is already going on. Well, I need an altar to pray for my relatives. I want to put these flowers. I want to place these statues. So I will just build it in the public realm, on the street. And if I need extra space in front of my entrance, I will just enclose this as in the form of a balcony, and I will have extra space in front of my entrance. So what I'm saying is that this process is already going on forever, basically, and a coordination, kind of management of this process should be done without, obviously, we cannot suppress especially in the Mediterranean, this pulsion for spatial appropriation. But at the same time, we need this type of methodology like Pablo's one to, I think, coordinate these events. Thank you.
Thank you, Giuseppe, in a very performative response to the project.
Was I timely?
No,
okay.
Perfect. So I don't know, we are a little bit out of time. We have the third section in half an hour. Do we have some time for questions? What do you think, Slobodan? 2 or 3 questions, maybe?
Yes, I think that we can. If
great,
everybody else, yes, we have really nice presentation. It would be pity not to have comments.
Yeah. So please raise your hands who wants to comment or pose a question to the several presentations that we had in this second session. No? Oh, Jordan, sure.
Maybe something more than a question is to highlight something, which is in several projects, the importance and the value that education is taking in the development of our goals. Also, I believe it's starting to become evident that the development of projects as part of courses in academia can provide very solid examples of fieldwork that are developed in practical, tangible terms. And I think, well, the project by Willy and Italo and Sophie, the project by Kristen, which started being developed in academia as studios in architecture in some cases, and then evolved looking towards a more practical application in societal, collective political terms, starts proposing a possibility for further action, together, of course, with the other projects that are already being developed in professional practice. So this link between education, professional practice, and research, I think, can be crucial for our future discussions. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Jorge. It was not a question, it was something that I think the roundtable in the end will develop, I believe. More questions? Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I can just take the opportunity to respond to Esteban's previous comment, question. As I would like, as of course a 10-minute presentation never gives the full insight into what, how something kind of came together. But without making it seem like it was a very straightforward process, because it was definitely not, creating these photo essays. It derived from many returns to the archives and to the sites themselves over more than 3 years, and kind of piecing these fragments together, piecing in terms of the photo essay unravels as photographic pairs. So on each page, there's 2 images, which are put together, which I put together to kind of serve as descriptive pairs to help to describe more these actual spatial material instances and experiences on the site, and further kind of describing or explaining what's going on there by pairing that with insights I found in the archive that bring either to attention the actual spatial spaces that I have photographed, or opportunities that such types of spaces could offer, or in terms of what the design intentions were and the concepts. So, and then this unravels in a sequence like a photo essay, which is to kind of, the idea was just to create this kind of more layered associative ground as a walking through these sites, to look at the smaller spaces that then kind of allow you to see that these landscapes are much more than green or open spaces, but really detailed, nuanced, and complex meetings of building, of architecture, and the grown, of nature, and of community. And so it was really just trying to show that complexity, and it was not that straightforward, but trying to pair spaces and text that could say more about something and more than one insight. These landscapes can't be captured with one photograph. They're complex, and they change their landscapes through seasons and through time, from the 1950s or 70s until today. And so that's just what I tried to do there. I hope that kind of answers a bit of your questions, Esteban.
Yes, thank you, Kristen. Thank you.
More questions? No? Well, I would like to just if there are no more questions, I will wait some seconds for no. So to wrap up a little bit this session, I think that a lot of interesting issues have been raised by these projects, and I think that there are relations between them, and somehow they present us in this idea of, that's why we selected the theme of the performance, that is related with the experience of space, and our narratives are enacted in the experience of space, but also, as we have seen also in these projects, the relation also with the archive, this idea of bringing the idea of the archive together with the experience of space, and how can narratives be developed through these several temporalities that can be somehow convoked and brought together in these projects seems quite promising. And I think it was very it was present a very strong plurality of processes and a lot of possibilities that goes from the practices of art, but also the practice of design. They are not excluded from these narratives. There are several ways and means to respond to this kind of building these narratives and writing with several different media to write these city narratives. We have it, it's because I'm in Portuguese time, it's 2:30 now, it's at 3, the next session, right, in 25 minutes. I'm correct? Yeah, so we will make a short break and we'll come back here in 25 minutes and to continue this fantastic journey that we are doing today. It's really very interesting. The presentations and the responses are, I would say, as my opinion, working very well for now. So see you at 3, right? I'm telling, yeah, at 3 o'clock in a moment.
Thank you.